Hey there, Jim Gavigan, Industrial Insight. I'm here at the beautiful Guantanamo Reserve in Northeast Florida. It's a place I go to get away sometimes and just reflect. It's mid-November 2019, and it's a time to be thankful. We're approaching Thanksgiving, and then beyond that, the Christmas season. But for me, it's even more special because we're approaching 3 years since I started Industrial Insight. And I want to tell you the story of Industrial Insight, how we started and the struggles that we spent those first year and a half. But I also want to tell it from a lens of now that we are in a more stable place, we can look back and reflect on where we've been. You know, we're finally stable. We've added our third person earlier this fall. And, you know, business is good, cash flow is good, you know, much more stable business platform. Otherwise, I wouldn't tell you this story, because you would look at me and go, you're too risky for us. And really, I want you to get a couple of impressions out of this. One is we understand where we've come from, and I also want you to understand just how determined we are and how much of a mission we believe that we're on at this moment in time. So if you're a potential customer of ours, a potential worker for us, I just want you to understand where we've come from and where we're going, and a little bit about our story. So in 2010, maybe 11, somewhere in that neighborhood, I was working for a system integrator out of the Memphis area. We were doing some work for a big manufacturer, and we had been fighting this problem with batch accuracy for quite a while, probably over a year. I had spent, just hours up in the middle of the night, and late at night, watching their batches run, trying to make it more accurate, and we had gotten it to where it was pretty good. But what was funny, my data collection, quote unquote, such as it was, engine was some N files in the PLC. And literally what I would do is I was working with an engineer named Trey, and I would go to Trey in the morning and I would say, hey Trey, give me a copy of the last 100 batches. And so what he would do is he would take a picture, a screen grab of the 50 N file register numbers, and all that was the difference between the target weight and the actual weight we put in the mixer. And so we would circle the ones that were out of 1,000-pound tolerance. That was our data collection. We had zero context about it at all. They came to us and they said, we need to make this much more accurate. And they gave us the metrics, and Trey came into my office and said, hey, this is what they need now. It's like, why? And so we didn't know. Turned out, they were going to land a whole new customer if they could get this kind of accuracy. So when we get off the phone with the customer, Trey says to me, Jim, they've turned over their PI system to us. All that stuff we were doing with the N files, I can put all that in a spreadsheet. We've got process book, we can trend things, and we can really understand, what's going on. So I rattled off a bunch of things that I needed to know. And I know he had some ideas, so he put it all in that report. Started looking at some of the trends and was like, oh, we're hitting feed rates that we had never seen before. We were trying to we had a little table in the PLC that, would start cutting equipment back and slow the feed down so that we could be accurate. And so we had never tuned the table for some speeds that we were seeing. It took us about 7 business days to get it fixed. Sure enough, we got it fixed. And, literally within, 7 days. Long story short, they brought the customer in. The customer said, great. Gave them the business. They had to build a whole new plant. They came to us and said, hey, we're going to ask you guys to work with us on this plant. We're not even going to bid it out. And literally, I remember thinking, this just made 2 companies millions of dollars. There's something to this data thing. I think that was even what I called it at the time. And I remember talking to management there. I said, we really need to get into this more because there's something here. And we never did. And then my next chapter started. So the next chapter started in about 2013. And I get this call, or series of calls, from a recruiter to recruit me to go to work for OSIsoft. I didn't realize who it was at the time. But when I finally found out who it was, I remember telling Kevin, the recruiter, I said, I can evangelize that story. I believe in that story because I've seen it work. I've seen it make two companies millions of dollars. And I would love to go to work there and help, manufacturers with this. I believe in it. And so I ended up working at OSIsoft for a couple of years. Things didn't work out, unfortunately. And then I ended up going back to the company I'd worked for before and actually started a manufacturing intelligence practice. Most of it was based around the PI system and all the things that it could do but wasn't doing for manufacturers. Because really what I recognized was that people needed the help. They wanted to use the latest functionality most of the time, and they just didn't have the time or the resources to do it. Or they really couldn't see their digital future. And I just felt very strongly that I could help with that. And so we started that practice, and it started off a little slow, but then it, really took off. And then, we started talking about, company goals versus my own personal goals, and they just really didn't line up. Now that I'm a business owner, it gives me a lot of perspective. I understand probably why that didn't work out a little bit better now. Actually, a lot better. But regardless, where they wanted to go and wanted me to go and where I wanted to go is two different places. So I ended up, realizing that I was going to have to leave. And I knew I wanted to continue doing it, but I didn't know how. And I had some competing opportunities, let's just say. So at the end of 2016, I knew I was going to leave that company, but I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. Well, I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to do it. I wanted to, start my own thing around, working with data. But I needed money because I was going to have to start completely over with customers and all of that. And I also had an opportunity on the table to potentially go to work for another software company. And there was this really important conversation that happened. Actually, there was two important conversations. One was a friend of mine, Chris Allis, told me about ROBS, or Rollover for Business Startup. What that allows you to do is take money you have in a retirement account, IRA, 401k, and actually basically buy stock in a company, your company, and give you the startup capital that you need. So I was thinking about doing that, but then I had this opportunity with a software company. The second conversation, and one that means way more than even the one with Chris, I think, was with my wife. I was telling her, I said, I think I'll just go to work for this software company and we save up money for a couple of years. I don't want to risk the rest of what we have in retirement and start this business. And I remember she just looked at me and she said, no, your time is now. Because what's going to happen with these customers that you know about or the people that you think you might be able to help? What happens to them? I said, they'll probably find somebody else, or, they probably won't do anything, and it'll still be an opportunity a couple of years from now. She's just like, no, I'm not buying it. You need to go do this. And literally, I remember looking at her and going, like, who kidnapped you? Who kidnapped my wife? And really, it was at that moment I knew God was speaking to me through her and really challenging me that I needed to start this business. And so that's where Industrial Insight really begins. Officially, I started 2016, December. And I knew I had about 7 months to actually get a project, deliver, and get paid for it. So I had till basically about July 1st. My first check came in on July 5th. So in a way I didn't make it, but really I did. I made it. But it was, I really thought, okay, well, I finally made it. Like everything's going to be okay. Well, I got some more projects, through that fall. But one of the things that started to happen was I wasn't getting the cash flow. I literally got down to $160 in my business account in late September, and I had this really hard conversation with Christina that, you know what, this is where we're at. I'm not going to be able to pay us for a while, probably till December. We have about $70,000 in accounts receivable, and if we can make it to about mid-December, first part to middle part of December, we're going to be fine. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to shut her down, or do you want me to keep going? Another important conversation, right? And she's like, Jim, she's like, you're just now starting to get traction, I believe, and you need to do this. You need to keep going. which really bolstered me through what was coming next. And, literally, we were having to float everything on credit cards. So we built up about $26,000 in credit card debt. Why? Because I so believed in what I was doing that I was going to do anything to make it happen. With her trust. If I didn't have that, I don't know if I would have done that. So as the fall wore on, I remember reading a sign at Tom Trout Construction up in Jacksonville. And it was something like this: the last of the ebb signals the first of the incoming, meaning the tide. So I literally thought, okay, well, maybe that's a sign that $160 in the bank account is the low point. It wasn't. November 30th, I still have this screenshot, $109.52. November 30th, 2017. That was the low point. And I actually kept that because I wanted to remember where I came from. And knowing that I easily could have thrown in the towel anytime that fall. And I didn't. And why? Because I believed in it. Christina believed in me. And I really felt like I was on a mission, and this was something that was God's gift to me, and I needed to keep going. So I did. Then I started, realizing I have a lot of potential projects coming in, and I'm going to need help. And so a friend of mine, Rodney Waterman, had gotten into being a lending broker. And so I called him and said, hey, we need to figure this out. And literally I went through a couple of banks before I got a yes. And I remember the first conversation, I literally had $600 in my business account and $500 of it was borrowed when I was asking for the money. And you think, Jim, you've completely gone off the rails here. Why would any bank lend to you? But the thing is, I had all this opportunity and I had this vision and I had customers and I had, some really nice customers that had believed in me to this point. And fortunately, the second bank said yes after they were about to say no. But what was interesting was they looked at all the data, but the data didn't tell them the story that they needed. So the second amount that I asked for was actually the right amount, fortunately. So it was kind of, by the grace of God, the first one got turned down. But anyway, we pretty much burned through that money in the first, maybe 4 or 5 months. Because a lot of the work that I thought was lining up either got delayed or went away. And I find that happens often in the work that we do. As people, think they want to do things, and sometimes it's really hard to justify or whatever. But anyway, all that started happening. And I remember the biggest project that I had lined up, it was pretty substantial, project. I remember talking to the operations manager of the mill, and he calls me and he says, look, Jim, he said, we've just gotten a bunch of new business. We got to start up our, the rest of our pulp mill and another paper machine that had been mothballed. Man, I got to put my resources there, because this is really survival for our mill and really our company. I said, Joe, I get it. You got to go do that, right? But it also took away, any resources on the biggest project that we were going to work on. Our biggest, potential project had basically just gone away. Actually, it ended up coming back the next year. We did end up, doing a fair amount of work with those folks after they got that machine and pulp mill back up and running. But it really took us until probably the spring of 2018, before things really started to settle. And for the most part, they've been pretty stable and pretty good since then. I mean, we've had a few bumps along the way, as any business does. But one of the things I continue to think back on, especially now where we are, it's really, what if I had quit? What if I had quit in 2017 in that fall when things got really tough? And I'll be honest, I think a lot of people would have quit then. I should have quit. If you're a prospective customer, prospective employee right now, maybe this is 5-10 years down the road. Maybe this is 6 months down the road. And you're like, thinking about working with this person or these folks in some kind of capacity. Hopefully you understand where we came from. And hopefully you understand that I so believe in what I'm doing here and the mission that we're on that I wouldn't let anything stand in the way. And I also wanted to document that even if, say, 10 years from now, we're a highly profitable company, everything's going swimmingly well, I never want us to forget where we came from and how it might not have happened. And how, what if I had taken that software job and chickened out? I mean, I just think about all those things right now, and it chokes me up because I just see this incredibly bright future, a very stable and good present, but an even better and brighter future for our company. I just can't imagine what would have happened if I had just said, no, I can't do it. Where would we be? Y'all wouldn't be watching this, I assure you. But, I think sometimes in life, you have to step back and understand where you've been, understand the struggles you've been through, and also understand that there's always a lesson in them. And, for me, that's kind of a biblical thing. Like, I know that, God brings his toughest battles to his best warriors. And I feel like I've been through some tough ones here. So I'm kind of honored to have gone through this, for sure. But also it's strengthened me. I'm even less afraid of things today than I used to be. I used to be afraid to take a risk. I remember a good friend of mine, Ray Archer, a long time ago. I'll never forget this story. He said he was getting ready to go on a ski trip. He'd never done anything like that. And he says, about the biggest risk I've ever taken is sometimes I might hit a 7-iron when I really need a 6. Meaning he was very risk averse. And I think that kind of resonated with me. I felt like I had taken some risks, but I had never really taken a risk. And this was a big one. And like I said, I just want, people to know, that, where we've come from. And for those of you that are watching that are even thinking about taking a risk, starting your own business, starting a division, doing something that is so out of your comfort zone that it makes you really uncomfortable. I hope this story inspires you. And I hope this story tells you not to give up, even when things look dire and you're working on the mission that is a calling for your life. Don't give up.